All right, so I'm seeing a lot of people have trouble with percents. Let's just talk about the three levels of percents. So let's start with level one. The first level is that I need to be able to turn a fraction into a percent. So for example, let's say I had 200 candies. I had 200 candies and 50 were green. What percent of the candies are green? So first, I need to make sure I understand, okay, this is the total here. There's a total of 200 candies. And what am I interested in? The thing of interest is the 50 green ones. So if I want to figure out what proportion of the candies are green, well, let me just put in the 50 candies over the 200. That's right. These are the green ones. This is the total population. I get 50 over 200, which reduces down to 25 over 100. And we can reduce this down further. We don't really have to because we have calculators. But this is just the same thing as a decimal, which is 0.25, or a percent, which is 25%. So next, if I had something like, I don't know, I'm asking you for 30% of 27. Let's say I'm looking for 30% of 27. All right, great. One option is I can put this into Desmos. You can put 30%, and then you'll see a little of pop out, and then I can just put 27, and it'll give me a number. That's awesome. But you'll also need to know this way. I can also multiply this by 0.3 times 27. And if I do that, I'll get the same answer. So what am I doing here? I'm functionally doing the backwards operation I just did previously. So I start out with my percent, and then I go over to my decimal. If you want to go from a decimal to a percent, so this way, you multiply it by 100%. If you want to go the other way, well, you divide it by 100%. On Desmos, you won't divide by this percent thing. You would just do divide by 100, and it'll give you 0.25. And the other little thing here is I always multiply, so I'm not going to do like 30 plus 27. I'm trying to figure out which portion of 27 is it. And the way to do that is by multiplying it. So I'm saying I only want 0.3 of this total number here, 27. The last thing I want to mention is 30% 27 is 8.1, and 0.3 times 27 is 8.1. So same exact number we get. Either process we do, but know this process for the harder questions. All right, but what if we want 30% greater than 27? So big difference from this, right? We have 30% of 27. I want 30% greater than 27. So that's a number that is 30% greater than this number. Well, I could find the 30%. So, I could do this. I get that 0.81 from that last question and just add it to the 27. That's a two-step process. But let's make this into a one-step process because that's going to help us to be fast and get this on the SAT when they give us harder questions and I am on a time crunch. It's also going to help us for multi-step problems later. So what is 30% greater than 27? Well, again, if I just do 0.30, you could write this 0.30, it doesn't matter, but times 27 equals 8.1. This would not be the greater number. I want something that's 8.1 greater. So how do we do that? Well, we include the original number. So, for example, I would do, instead of 0.30, I'm going to do 1.30 times 27. Or in other words, 130% of 27. This is going to give us 35.1. So 35.1 in both cases. This is cool. Okay, well, what if we want to do this? What is 30% less than 27? Well, what do we do in that case? Well, again, we could do the same thing where we get our 30% 27 and we subtract it. But again, I want you to be able to do a one-step problem. Here's a common mistake students do. They do 0.30 times 27, and then they think that's going to be their answer, whatever that comes out to, which would be 8.1. But that is not 30% less than 27. That's 30% of 27. So if I want 30% less than 27, well, I'm going to get my 100%. I'm going to take away 30%. So what's left over there? Well, that's 70%. So what I would actually multiply by to do it in one step is 0.70 times 27. And this is going to give me my correct answer, which would be 18.9. Okay, great. So that's our answer for this one. But another way to think about it is, again, if I'm decreasing by 30%, I'm just subtracting the 0.3 from my 100%, or the 30% from my 100%, however you want to think about it. Okay, so now there's only about 2 more things I need to know. The first is percent change. So let's say I had $25 and then I gained some money and now I have $40. I might ask you, what is the percent change that occurred here? Well, here's the easy way to figure it out. First, kind of think about, where did you start from? I started from here and I'm ending here. So I know it's going to be some sort of positive percent change. So how much did this actually increase by? Well, all I'm going to do is I'm going to get the difference, which is 15 here. So again, I'm going to get the difference. I'm going to just call that D. And I'm just going to divide that by the initial amount, which is 25. We'll call that D over I. This would just be 3 over 5, or approximately 60%. So that was the increase here, it was 60%. All right, so the next kind of question is a multiple percent increase. So let's say I had a number, let's say I had like the number 30. And I increased that by 50%. Let's say then I increased it by 110%. So remember what increase means. That means I'm going to add this to 100%, and I'm also going to add this to 100%, which is going to look a little weird. So my first increase, I can do 30 times 1.5 or 1.50, however you want to look at it. Same number. Next, it increased again by 110%. So remember, that's going to be 100% plus 110%. So I'm going to multiply it again by 2.1. If they decreased it, then, I would do a decrease instead of an increase. But they'll sort of do different things. They'll say, oh, this decreased, then it increased, or this increased, then it decreased by some amount. Here I'm just doing a double increase. In this case, this all equals 94.5. So these are pretty much all the different things that you'll see on the SAT. They're going to ask you a little bit different, but don't worry. We have 3 practice worksheets where you're going to have a bunch of different kinds of problems where you can practice this skill.